All right, we're ready to go.
Good morning. Good morning. We're a whole lot of moving parts. Sorry. Um, Thank you, and good to see you. And do you have any testimony?
Good morning. Yes, I do. I have some brief remarks that I'll share.
Go ahead. Thank you,
Great.
Commissioner. Good to see you.
You too. Good morning again. I do have a few remarks that I'll provide, but I have submitted written testimony on behalf of DAS overall in our budget. Again, good morning to Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Summers, Representative Nuccio, and distinguished members of the committee. I am Michelle Gilman, the Commissioner of the Department of Administrative Services, known as DAS. I would like to give you a brief overview of DAS and some significant elements of the governor's proposed fiscal year 2027 midterm budget adjustments, and I welcome any questions you may have. DAS is organized into 9 functional areas that I think you're largely familiar with that report to the Commissioner. That includes human resources, equal employment opportunity, real estate and construction, information technology, internal audit, procurement services, the business office, communications, and legal and legislative. And within these functional areas, we house a number of distinct programs, including workforce development, technology deployment, small and minority business outreach, statewide security, leasing, facility and construction services, fire and building code administration, state fleet and workers' compensation oversight, school building project grant management, and more. But all together, we're united in a common mission to support Connecticut's growth, drive continuous innovation, and provide rewarding careers for state employees and others throughout the state. And so before us, the governor's proposed budget adjustments include an all funds appropriation of $266,602,611 in fiscal year 2027, which is an increase of $6.8 million and some change from the fiscal year 2027 appropriated amount. And this increase includes a $3.5 million baseline adjustment to the State Insurance Risk Management Board to provide certain transportation related increases, which we're certainly happy to go into further depth on. And then an additional baseline adjustment of $1.5 million in IT services funding is also included in the adjustments, which reflects contractual increases. In particular, the increase includes $500,000 for technology to assist agencies in meeting the federal DOJ mandate for accessibility, which was mandated just a few years ago and which we are in the process of implementing now across all of our executive branch agencies and others. The remaining funds cover contractual cost increases, largely driven by Broadcom usage, which we can also elaborate on. But Broadcom took over another vendor that we were previously utilizing, and so those cost drivers are seeing some of the increases that we're requesting. In terms of other proposed midterm budget adjustments, we are requesting funding of $941,462 for various operating expenses and facilities costs, including costs for state police exams, additional security guards at various state office locations, and operating expenses for the Morgan Street garage. The proposed budget adjustment consolidates the workers' compensation allocation for all agencies into a single SID. Currently, the workers' compensation funds drawn from the general fund are distributed quarterly to the DAS based on specific SIDs for several entities, including UConn Health, CSCU, DEMIS, DESPE, DDS, DOC, and the general government funds, which encompasses the remaining state agencies. These quarterly allotments are determined by an approved percentage for each quarter, with the first quarter typically containing the largest portion of the annual allocation. The workers' comp program is intended to compensate individuals who are injured on the job, And although we can look at historical trends to inform future budgeting, the nature of the program and of the dollar amounts the state anticipates to pay out is highly unpredictable. So the existing budgeting and accounting processes are quite rigid and lack flexibility needed for such a volatile program. So as a result, we are requesting that the SIDs be consolidated into one SID, which would allow for our staff to administer that program in a much more flexible way. But by giving us that flexibility, the transfers will be processed through a budget journal, and it will include detailed reasoning for their necessity. This change, however, would not, I do want to stress, the ability of DAS to share information with our legislative stakeholders and others about different claims, and we can still categorize the budget using department codes, so it will still have the same transparency to share with all of you and others that are requesting that. So this adjustment would alleviate concerns on our part about insufficient funds by one agency and ensure that workers' compensation can meet payment deadlines effectively, both for our employees and for our vendors. I know we've had conversations throughout the course of the year about this accounting adjustment. It's really a behind-the-scenes request that would help manage the program more efficiently for our team. So we appreciate your consideration of that request. So overall, happy to answer any questions you may have on our budget adjustments, including the workers' comp request as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for that presentation, and I'm glad you brought up the highlights of the budget. I'm going to say first on the workman's comp. Putting all the lines sort of reminds me of putting all the IT in one spot too. For us legislators, we have a hard time on finding a lot of the details, and by having the agencies workman's comp, it helps us to identify who may be overutilizing that line item.
Mm-hmm.
So this means that we have to come to you now for everything that we need, whereas it's in the budget readily for us to be able to see. So I don't think it's transparency. It may be easier for you guys, but it's not transparency for us because we don't know what it is until we ask for it. And if we forget, that makes it something. So we can talk about that a little later, and I'm sure my colleagues are going to weigh in on that. The other thing that Broadcom is taking the place of whom?
They acquired, what was it? VMware was the previous company. And so they had an acquisition. They were acquired by Broadcom, which is the vendor that's now in place.
And we had a contract with VMware before, and so the contract we had with VM. Can you give us an idea of how much is that contract?
Certainly. Let me, if I could, acknowledge Mark Raymond, mm-hmm. our Deputy Commissioner at DAS and Chief Information Officer, to come up and provide additional details. Mark, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Happy to be here. This is the Broadcom acquisition of VMware is one that's largely creating waves across the industry, and that there was a relatively large cost increase as it moved.
Somebody want to let them in?
After the purchase.
Is that Kathy?
The function of the underlying software allows us to take a physical server and allow us to run multiple virtual things on it. So it's a fundamental underlying technology. The current contract that we have with VMware is consolidating a lot of the different agency payments and making it more cost effective. However, the last year's payment from a DAS perspective was in the $800,000 range.
I'm sorry, I I had somebody knocking at our door.
Well, I know, I
I
thought
did.
the public was allowed in. I don't know, maybe not.
Maybe.
The-
Anyhow, okay.
The DAS part of the VMware Broadcom contract last year was around $800,000.
800,000? Okay, and that was with the BM software. So the contract that we are going into with Broadcom is the same thing? It's not increased, it's the same amount?
It's going up approximately. It was over $400,000, so it's almost double.
In an increase?
Yep.
Okay. And so could you, to the working group, just bring the where we started from
Yes.
with the 800 to the 1.2?
Yes.
So that we can understand what services we're expanding, or what are we acquiring with that. That helps us, I think, a lot to understand it. And I'm going to save because we're trying to do 2 each, and then we'll come back and start all over again. So I'm going to ask my co-chair if she's ready to
You can go to Tammy,
Okay.
I think Tammy has.
represent her chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming. I have a couple of questions. First of all, clarifying, the $3.5 million for the increase in rail, this is mentioned that it's about federal tort cap. Is this something that is required? Is there something that's driving this increase in coverage?
If I may, I will have Melissa Frank, who is the Director of the State Insurance Risk Management Board, excuse me, speak to the change.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Just
Good morning. Happy to respond to the question. So yes, the state is required
Could you
to-
just state your name, please?
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. Sorry. Melissa Frank, Director of Insurance and Risk Management. I'm staff to the State Insurance and Risk Management Board, which is APO to DAS. The federal tort cap limits are expected to increase. Right now, they are approximately $323 million. It's expected to move to $400 million sometime early, the end of this quarter. There's been a lot going on with the federal government, so I don't think they're quite on track with their timing. So not only will we need to increase the cap on the existing coverage that we have for the Hartford rail line, the major driver of that $3.5 million increase is providing rail coverage for a new line that is, DOT, I understand, is negotiating with a new operator for that line, and they're anticipating that they will have to provide the same coverage that they are currently providing to the Hartford line. So those two things, increasing the federal tort, paying for the increase in the federal tort cap limit on existing coverage, adding new coverage, and then also to that level is what's driving that anticipated increase.
Do we think that new line is going to be online within the next fiscal year?
What I was told by DOT is that the contract is expected to be operational in June.
Okay. And then my second question is in regard to the Morgan Street Garage. Isn't that owned by CRDA?
Yes, the garage is owned by CRDA, but we actually we use that space, and so when we acquired it, and let me get my additional notes on CRDA. If you just give me one moment. The state purchased that garage, and through CRDA, we operated the garage, but we continue to lose money from that garage just because it's not utilized enough. And so we are working with CRDA at this point to look at opportunities to market the garage further, to increase utilization given Dunkin' Donuts Stadium, People's Bank Arena, and other opportunities downtown. But at this point, we are beginning to lose money off of that garage. And so we're estimating a shortfall of $450,000, hence the budget adjustment request.
So when you say we're losing money on the garage and you need $450,000 more, if we owned, I guess I'm not following. If we own it, what is the $450,000 for?
So it's my understanding that CRDA owns the garage, is that correct?
So we're paying CRDA $450,000?
Yep, so let me, if I could, I'll ask Darren Hobbs, our Deputy for Real Estate and Construction Services, to provide how we fund this operation. Thanks, Darren.
Good morning. Darren Hobbs, Deputy Commissioner at DAS, Real Estate Construction Services. So our facilities team at DAS has responsibility for managing the garage. We do that in partnership with CRDA, who in turn partner with ProPark, who manage the parking operations. So even though we own the garage, we do have operational expenses day to day for ensuring that the parking garage is open and operational. That includes things like just general maintenance, but providing the staff from ProPark, from our security teams, and overall maintenance and improvements to the garage. So those things cost money on an ongoing basis. And as Commissioner said, we're projecting a shortfall just short of $500,000 in the coming fiscal year.
Is that the full shortfall or just our portion of the shortfall?
That's the full shortfall.
So we're paying for it even though CRDO owns it, we're paying for the full shortfall, and they're not paying for any of it?
In terms of ownership, I don't know it's as clear as saying CRD owns the garage. I think we're given the care and custody of the garage, which we then partner with CRD to help us manage, because they manage more downtown parking garages than we do. They have the expertise and the contacts to do that. It's more efficient for them to use those contracts to help us manage our facility.
Where does the revenue go?
That's the garage is supposed to be a special self-sustaining fund, and that's the challenge with that, is that it doesn't sustain itself at the moment.
So the $450,000 then is for the expenses of keeping the garage up, because we don't have the revenue to cover the expense.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Since
Just on
COVID,
a
we
side
lost a lot of
note,
that revenue.
since you guys manage it, I would like to let you know that I've been down there a few times now, and every single handicap parking spot is filled with equipment, unless you go all the way up to the top floor. First of all, I don't know that that's legal, but literally every handicap spot is filled with construction equipment on all of the floors. So I would hope maybe we could look into not doing that.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If some questions in regards to the other expenses and stuff under the personal services. What is the increase? The increase in there.
The increase to our personal services?
Yes.
If you could demonstrate, I'm sorry, let me just look at that. I think we are seeing some reallocations in our PS line for IT positions and one HR position. Let me take a
So
look
you
at
listed
that.
them under other expenses instead of placing them in the IT service, because IT services are up too.
Sorry, one moment. I'm going to ask my CFO, Erica DeQuilla, to identify any increases in our PS line. So Erica DeQuilla, I want to introduce, is our Chief Financial Officer at DAS. And I'm just taking a look. I just want to be clear, you're looking at our personal service PS line for increases, or?
Yes, I'm looking at where you have other expenses, and it's and there was a 3.46% increase in there. Yeah, that's other expenses.
Good morning. So are you looking at, you're looking at other expenses, not
Yes.
necessarily PS?
Uh-huh.
Sure. So for other expenses, we are looking for an increase of $1,080,016. The majority of that is increasing our facility costs. There's adjustments to our property contracts. So the maintenance companies that take care of the DAS-owned facilities. So there's expenses, monthly expenses that we have to pay to them. On top of that, there's additional expenses that are increasing. So the admin costs for our fleet, there's increases there. So that's combined in there, as well as Yeah, property maintenance contracts, fleet administrative rates increases of about 48,000. Sorry, the property maintenance contracts is $140,000 increase. So that's being added to the current contracts that we hold. And then also our other operating expenses. So 450,000 of that, it goes to Morgan Street Garage. And then the remaining is for additional facility costs. Security costs, which is one of our big drivers for the state of Connecticut at state office buildings, and then additional facility expenses needed to cover. Because the majority of our operating expenses, top one is around 18% is our security. Then is electricity at 17%, cleaning services also 17%. And then property management services comes in at about 14%. And then one of the other top drivers of our OE is our premises repair and maintenance services. And then everything else after that is, minimal, 3%, 2%, less than 1% of our budget. But the top drivers, almost $20 million, actually almost $24 million, is our top five. So security guards, electricity, premises cleaning services, property management services, and premises repair and maintenance services.
Because normally in the past, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, they weren't those like security and other maintenance charges? Wasn't they normally in the line item for rents and moving? Weren't they normally in the past?
So rents and moving is a separate SID. So our operating expenses goes for the DAS owned facilities, whereas the rents and moving SID is specific for any leases that might be held by DAS or other state office buildings. So there might be some security expenses combined in there, but that's separate than the DAS owned office buildings.
All right. So from the working group, can you just give me more of a detailed breakdown with the other expenses and what they were allocations for? There's the breakdown, and then also for the moving and rent expenses. Can you just give us a breakdown so that we can be able to just see?
Right, so you want a breakdown of like what we're currently paying for out of our OE?
Yes.
Sure.
Well, what's in this particular budget?
Oh, in this
what the expenses and how you talked about the percentage and where the allocations were for?
Right, so in this budget, the $1,080,016 is predominantly, the biggest cost driver is the $450,000 that we're getting for the Morgan Street Garage to cover operating costs. The security.
No, but what I was saying is if you can provide us
So
with
the
a
working groups.
breakdown.
Oh, okay,
So
you want it
yeah.
separately?
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
sure.
well, you can just provide us so that we can review it, look at it, and then we have
Right.
some discussion for on the work session.
Okay, yeah, no,
Okay.
I absolutely can provide that too,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
So that would be for the breakdown for the other expenses and also the breakdowns for the rents and the moves and stuff.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
We'll
Thank
be
you.
happy to do that. And I just want to note that, unfortunately, we are seeing increased costs in those areas. Of course, we're constantly looking at, other options, whether it's security or, other maintenance contracts that can help reduce our costs. But it's just an example of where we're seeing inflationary costs in these areas.
Yeah, because I know in the past you have you've been very detailed in terms of explaining some of the security costs and what some of the other buildings, and then also I know that you said you had different contracts with outfits and at different locations and stuff like that. But we just wanted to be able to see more of a breakdown and stuff.
Absolutely,
all.
we can provide
Okay.
that,
Thank
certainly.
you.
And basically, the OE is what we really want to see, the whole line item, where
Sure.
the contracts are and everything.
Yep.
Sure.
We have that broken out. We'll send it to you this week. Thank you.
Senator Austin.
Good morning. I apologize for being late today. I had a veterans meeting where people were chatty. So I couldn't get out as quick as I wanted to. I would like to talk a lot on this workers' compensation consolidation, which I have to say right now I'm completely opposed to for a lot of reasons, but mostly because I don't think we're handling workers' compensation correctly in our 24/7 operation. If you look at the Department of Corrections, it's twice what any other agency is across the board. If I'm looking at it on page 26 on workers' compensation claims, the Department of Corrections claims are $37,722,823. The next closest one is mental health and addiction services at 18 million. We're double that in the Department of Corrections, which I think, from my perspective, shows that there's always been more in the Department of Corrections just based on the nature of the work. But I think that this shows that there's a problem in this. I started doing work on looking at the Department of Corrections workers' compensation a number of months ago, and I talked to you. Thank you very much for the information, which showed the cases by facility, by demographic, so that I could understand what was going on relative to that. And I think in consolidating these, it mutes the problem. It doesn't allow the problem to be as out front as this is. Now, I also asked about this because there was a newspaper article that there were thousands and thousands of claims, which means that everybody in the Department of Correction had a claim 2 or 3 times a year, and that's not true. And so what it was we have had claims going back to, I think the earliest one was 1979. I'm thinking that we can clear up our records a bit better and get rid of some claims, settle them, and let's talk about what's going on. Because anybody who was working in 1979 or even 1989 is not working for the department any longer. And if they have a case that's that old, we should settle that case. And I know we don't settle cases anymore, but we should settle that case. Or anytime anybody in the media asks for this, we should provide them with the list of claims that are more than 30 years old and say, these cases are more than 30 years old. They skew the numbers. And having worked, I didn't work in 1979, but I was there in 1989 until 2010. And the preponderance of the cases, although there's been a large uptick in the last 2 years, the preponderance of the cases were well back during that time frame when we were seeing an expansion of facilities, and there was a lot of unrest in the facilities. So I think that putting these together is going to skew publicly the numbers. People are going to look at it. They're not going to do what I or many of the other people on this committee, they're not going to call up and say, can you break that out for me? Let's fine tune that and break it out even more, because I want to know by facility, by gender, by demographic, where the problems are. I would really like to know a breakdown by shift, which I don't think you have the capacity to do. So that is something that the reasoning behind consolidating this, I don't get. Could you give me a succinctly what a reason behind that is?
Certainly, and if I may, I'll ask Lisa Annis, HR Administrator at DAS, who oversees the workers' compensation management for DAS, oversees these accounts to help facilitate the conversation. Overall, what we're asking is for this proposal to really help us on the back-end accounting side of the house as we manage these accounts. What I can assure you, and as you've noted, we've provided you other reporting mechanisms that we would be very willing to discuss, whether you put it in statute or otherwise, whether they're on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, to continue to show you where the claims are and where those funds are. So this is in no way to provide, lack of transparency around the accounts, the claims, and other things. We are really trying to facilitate a much more efficient way for us to distribute the funds within the accounts, because we're not regularly having FAC meetings. And then for when we're showing shortfalls in these accounts, to make sure that claims are paid out in an appropriate amount of time to employees and also to our healthcare providers as necessary. And so this gives Lisa and her team the ability to move that money in an efficient way, but to meet your goals of transparency, which we think you also do deserve, we are very willing to provide monthly reports, quarterly reports, and get down into as much detail as we can provide to you so that you can see what those various claims on an agency-by-agency basis and in more detail as we can provide to you. But this would help us to administer the program, and I'm happy to have Lisa provide some additional context around what that looks like. And then before she does that, I do want to acknowledge that the DOC team is here to provide some additional information as you may wish around some of the opportunities that they're looking at DOC to reduce claims. And I know they brought on a new safety officer as well, given your approval of that budget item last year. And we all recognize that these costs are escalating. But I'm, again, happy to pass the mic over to Lisa, and she can introduce herself and provide additional information about this request.
So
Thanks.
before I go to that, I don't really care about the accounting mechanism. I mean, that's your deal. I don't care about that. I want transparency. And I don't want just transparency here for the legislators who have access to asking for additional reports. I want it to be transparent to the public so that they see what is going on in the Department of Correction, and that there are far too many cases that are going on, and we need to clear up our records too. We should settle cases. There is no reason why we don't settle those cases that are that old. If we're going back to 1979, I think if the person has died, we can take them off the workers' compensation rolls. And they may have died not because of their injury, but because actuarially, Department of Corrections employees have a very low age of living. The fact is that Department of Corrections, because of, in my opinion, because of the issues relative to hypertension and cardiac issues and stress issues related to the Department of Correction, die at a much younger age. And that's a national statistic. It's also true here in Connecticut that they die well before 65. Now, I've lived longer than that, but I started later, so maybe I'm just too stubborn. But I just think that I'm really worried that we put this together. The regular public is not going to have access to these numbers. Right now, they do have access to those numbers. I don't want to see us not have access to those numbers. And I don't want everybody to have to do an FOI request to get the numbers, and the regular public would have to do an FOI request. They can't call up the Department of Administrative Services and say, I want to have these numbers broken out by facility. I want to understand the gender. I want to understand what is going on. There's other problems here. And when I talked about this, it used to be a policy for supervisors in the Department of Corrections to call anybody who was out on workers' compensation and call them and say, hey, listen, we miss having you here at work. Is there anything that we can do to accommodate getting you back to work? We want you to understand that we value you and want you to come back. Now, this is a hard job. And when people get out of the job, it's equally hard to come back after, in particular after an injury, if they think that their body is not going to react to another situation that happens in the Department of Correction. A lot of these are slip and falls. They're not an engagement with the population at all. They're slip and falls, either going to a situation or just in general. These are older buildings. I believe that they should be looked at for providing safer movement inside the facility. There is interaction with the incarcerated population that happens, but they're not the preponderance of the issues. When I looked at the numbers, the preponderance of the issues were slip and falls. And why are they having slip and falls? What is going on that's related to that slip and fall situation? I think it needs to be looked at. And I really am concerned about us consolidating anything that is not going to provide that. I think that we need to go back to some of the basic things that happened before we did the consolidated human resources, where the supervisors were making calls to every person that was out at least once a week to make sure that that person is receiving the right care. Are they having a hard time with a third-party administrator getting an appointment? Are they having a hard time on getting their prescriptions paid for? Are they having a hard time getting scheduling done? So those are things that I think we have to look at. We also have to make sure that the person realizes their value. And because the numbers are so high, I have some significant concerns on the morale. I was actually talking to someone today, and they work within the confines of the workers' compensation, and they were saying that in the Department of Corrections, they're seeing a significant morale issue that we need to start addressing. And I would like to see that happen. And I think part of the problem is they're not seeing the care that I know that you have, that I know that the department has translated down to the level of the person that is out on workers' compensation, and they're not coming back. So I really think that we have to look at that. And again, us not having FAC meetings, we're more than willing to have monthly FAC meetings. Tony and I sit on FAC, so does Senator Summers, who's on this call, so does Representative Nuccio. It's not being canceled because we're not available. We are available to do FACs, and I don't, if the problem is that we're not having regular FAC meetings, then that we need to schedule those FAC meetings and have them. That's a much better way than to have somebody do an accounting mechanism because we're having a hard time having FAC meetings. That's our problem. That's not the legislature's problem. That's the administration's and the Office of Policy and Management to schedule those meetings. We're more than willing to come. So, ma'am, you can go ahead.
So if I may, and I'll have ask Lisa to give some thoughts. When we go back to the transparency issue, and we can certainly talk about this through session, and I'd love to do so. Some thoughts that come to mind is whether we could utilize the open data portal, which is a great source of data for not only our legislative stakeholders, but also for the general public. And so I'd love to have that discussion about whether we can utilize the open data portal as a source of information around the workers' compensation program. We're utilizing that for so many other programs across the state. So is that an opportunity to show some of that data? And so that could be an option that I'm happy to discuss both with you, the governor's office, and OPM, which manages the open data portal. And so that is a thought. And then certainly many of the issues that you raised, Senator Austin, are issues of concern that we all share, certainly OPM, the governor's office as well. And, you know, again, DOC is here. They can certainly speak to many of the concerns that you've raised around, you know, specific DOC issues. You know, again, we share them as well at DAS. Our specific charge is to manage the administration of the program in terms of the funding and making sure that claims are being processed and then working with the TPA that then does the deep work on that. But of course, we work hand in hand with our agency partners that are then deep in with the employees and others to, you know, fix issues on site and on the facilities. But let me have Lisa give a
So I
bit
just
of
want
a-
to say, yesterday we had the Department of Correction come.
Mm-hmm.
Many people testified against putting more real dollars into the department to handle some of the medical and mental health stuff. And there's a program called High Tech,
Mm-hmm.
which is doing a lot of work to analyze some of the things that we have. It's been nationally recognized. I think that it's important for us to, that's a bottom up, so it starts with the people that are working right on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Not just the custody side, but that bottom level. They indicated that there were 60 people, and I don't know the time frame of this. I don't know that they said that there were 60 correctional staff that had presented with suicidal idealizations. I am increasingly concerned that we are ignoring a group of people. It's one of our largest state agency workforces is the Department of Corrections. They do a job that is very hard. And I really want to make sure that we are paying attention to our workforce that is there. And I'm not convinced that there is, and I think that the commissioner does a great job representing his people, and you're doing a great job representing your people. I'm worried about the regular person that's giving me a call saying, Kathy, you know what it was like, you worked here, and nobody's paying attention to what's going on with us. We are scared. And we are scared relative not to the job per se, but to having the ability to make it 25 years to get to that point where you can retire.
Understood, and agree. And to transition to your question around the old claims, which I think we agree as well, we would like to see resolved. I think Lisa can speak to that and some
That
of
would
the
be
other
great.
concerns that you've raised as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilman, and good morning to all of you today. As Michelle stated, my name is Lisa Annis, and I oversee the state's workers' compensation program. Senator Austin, you raised many very important points. As far as the settlements are concerned, our current operating budget just doesn't have enough money for us to offer settlements. We recognize the value, in doing so. It's just not something that we have the ability to do on the regular. So, when a state employee has a claim, it stays open for the entirety of their life. So, when you have someone that was injured in 1979, if they are still needing treatment today, they certainly can seek treatment to deal with, whether it's pain management, medication, perhaps surgeries that might be needed. Speaking on a personal note, my father's a retired state trooper, injured in the 80s, and he's had to have 2 knee replacements, under workers' compensation. So we don't want to shut that door on our retirees or people that were injured, through the course of their employment. So we do allow their claim to remain opened, to have money to settle cases. There's that upfront cost where there would be money needed to be paid today, but there certainly could also be a cost savings to the state in the future. It's just the needs, our regular operating budget does not have enough money for us to make any significant strides in that. So that's certainly something that we'd love to engage and look into and explore with, those that see the value in that. But, as far as some of the other concerns that you mentioned, just speaking to the DOC point about the point of contact, we do have representatives here today, but I can confirm that it is still in their administrative directives that the lieutenants are making phone calls to those workers that are out on workers' comp. We speak regularly with DOC leadership. Actually, I was on a call with them as recently as yesterday, kind of talking about what can we do to look at the claims. We recognize that we want employees coming to work and leaving work in the same fashion that, that they arrived. And we feel ownership in making sure that we're providing safe environments for them. Obviously, the line of work that they're in, that the state troopers are in, is naturally, there's inherent risk, right? And so if there's something that we can do to offer a safer environment, we want to be doing that. DOC does a great job with their EAP program. We have teams that sit with them as well. They did hire a safety officer who is, partnering with my team, looking at claims on a more granular level to see what we can do. And I'd offer them if you have some more questions about the work that they're doing internally, I'm happy to even report out on that. As far as the questions about reporting, the change to the consolidation of the SID would not change our ability to report out to you. I recognize the value of the data that you have right now broken out by agency, and to Commissioner Gilman's point, I'd be more than happy to have something submitted to the committee or, put on the open data portal, that does still break that down by each individual agency. We could even get more granular than just like the general government fund. You could see every individual agency, because behind the scenes, we would still break that down by a department code. It would just be one SID with multiple layers, and our CFO could probably speak to that a little bit better, but our reporting structure wouldn't change. We could still report out to the same level that we are today, because we're not, when I'm running those reports, or I know, like, as we had conversations a few months ago, that reporting has no bearing on the SID structure. We report out of a completely different system for that level of detail, so that level of transparency would still exist today. It just wouldn't be broken down. I understand what you're saying, where you can see it broken down
Right.
easier, but we're happy to supply you with documents, on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, that still provides that level of breakdown. You wouldn't
And as
lose
soon as
that.
somebody like me leaves the legislature, it gets buried and it never gets talked about again. That's my concern. This is not something that you want to change for, that is going to happen today, because you have a number of people here that are going to ask those questions. But when we all leave the legislature, it becomes a matter of practice that it doesn't show up. So people who have not worked in the department, who have not paid attention to the workers' compensation system, who don't see the value of this breakdown, will not see the value, and it gets lost in future iterations of the budget. And somebody looks at this and they don't recognize that Department of Correction is double the number of every other agency in cost, double the number of every other agency. It's just not, it's not something that I see as valuable. So I gotta move on, because there's other people that have questions, and I apologize. I appreciate your comments. I understand that. I've had a conversation with the commissioner. I'd like to get one number at the work group. I would really like to get the number that it would cost us to clear up any claim that's older than 30 years old. So if we could get rid of those, that's a large number of cases. I think that we should look at resolving some of those cases, because some of them, the people are going to workers' compensation and saying they want to settle, and they're being told there is no money. And I agree with you, there isn't. The money is not there to allow you to settle these cases. I think we should settle some of them. But I have, I think, 3 people that have questions. So Representative Nuccio, Andre, Dina.
I think, have you gone there? That'll be my second time, I think.
I don't care how we do it.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just trying to be fair there. I have to say, I agree with Senator Austin. I am not in favor of combining the workman's comp at all. I think it does, having this broken out does point a pretty glaring flashlight at where we need to be doing better. And when things get combined, you do lose that level of granularity that I'm not in favor of doing it either. I don't have nearly as much the history and background that Kathy does on it, but I just think from a transparency perspective, being able to identify where we have people getting hurt and where we have claims more up across the board should be something that we look at to how do we create a better environment there. That is not my question, though. That is just support. Just had to let this lady know that. Question in regard to two things, one small. The adjustment to reflect current requirements, there's really no detail on that $200,000 there. If you could please just bring some detail around what that is, the adjust funding to reflect current requirements, and in OE, it's about $200,000. And then the last thing is I'm digging into the budget a lot more this year, since I've been here for a while now, and all of the line items that you have under your budget, if you could please bring a description of what is in those line items, what the programs are, the population that you are working with, and any sorts of metrics that you're applying to those spends, I would appreciate that, please.
Certainly. We are happy to do that.
Okay.
Many of them, some of them are, we transfer, so the firefighters fund, we transfer that funding straight to the comptroller's office. Some of the tuition and travel, labor funds, loss control are really labor accounts for tuition and training and other matters related to that. But we're happy to provide, some specific narratives around what those funds are.
I appreciate that. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Can you just give me a quick recap on your vacancies
Certainly.
and your positions?
Thank you. So at this time, for our all appropriated funds headcount, we have an authorization of 1,010 in terms of a head count. Right now, we have, in terms of a head count, as of January 31st, 902 positions are filled, and we have 108 positions open or vacancies.
108.
And we are, continually evaluating those vacancies. They're on a rolling basis. For example, our elevator inspectors, I'm going to give a plug for our elevator inspector vacancies and our boiler inspector vacancies. We often have trouble filling those vacancies, but that's those are generally continuous recruitments in our life and safety areas in particular.
What was the dollar amount again? You said with the total of the vacancy
Total-
positions?
So total headcount is 1,010. We have filled 902, and we have open 108, and that was as of January 31st.
Okay, but what do you have how many you have retiring? Do you have any retirements coming up this summer?
We do. We certainly can give you a projected retirement list. Until an individual actually submits for their retirement, it's really only a projection. But we do have, projected retirements that we could likely provide to you. But we don't have a significant wave coming up at DAS at this time.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Corpus?
Thank you. I had a couple of questions on workers' comp just in general. So I share the concern about what deal we're, so to speak, we're offering to someone who's been injured on the job in the state. So if they're injured, they receive for the entirety of their life a portion of the salary they earn. It's about 75% in Connecticut relative to a national average of like 65, which I'm happy that we offer more. But is that right? They get about 75% of their, okay, please correct me.
No, thank you. So that would only be paid to them while they're unable to work. So if you're injured at work and the doctor
Right.
takes you out of work, those are wage replacement benefits that are paid to you. There are other types of benefits. So if you have a permanent partial disability, so if you suffered an arm injury, a shoulder injury, and the doctor has given you a rating that you've lost, say 20% usage of your right shoulder, there's a percentage that would be paid to you for a defined period of time as dictated by the workers' comp statutes. But there isn't a lifetime payment that anyone is necessarily guaranteed. The 75% or the 100% in the case of like a hazardous duty. So if a CO is injured, a correction officer is injured, by an inmate, there are by statute claims that could be paid up to 100% of their lost wages, but that would just be lost wages from employment.
I meant in the cases that Senator Austin was talking about, someone who's permanently injured and unable to return to work kind of ever. So in that case, those people receive, I just want to know how we account for this population of people. Those people are considered active state employees?
No. I
They're
mean,
not.
the
They're
majority
not.
of them would probably apply for a disability retirement at that point.
Okay.
If they're no longer able to have gainful employment, they would qualify for a state disability retirement if it was injured, if the injury resulted from their employment with us. The point that stays opened is like medical treatment. So if you suffered a debilitating back injury, just because you're no longer employed by us doesn't mean that you can't still seek treatment for that or get medication for that type of thing.
Okay, so they are counted in our active state employees as long as they're on disability, and then they go into a disability retirement, and then they move to the roles of our retired state employees, regardless of the reason for their retirement. In this case, it happens to be their disability. And then they're eligible for the package of state retiree benefits till death, and then their spouse, et cetera. They just fully go into that bucket. Is that right?
If I'm understanding your question correct, yes.
Okay, and how many people are we talking about? I see the numbers of what we're paying out, the 113 million, for example, in the governor's estimated fiscal year 26, but how many human beings are we talking about? Do we have a sense of that in the aggregate?
I don't have any numbers people-wise with me today, but I can get you some numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Answer the work group, yeah.
All set?
Yes.
Are there any other comments or questions? I think you're all set.
Great, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Up next is the Office of Policy and Management, Paul Patamianos, which has taken me 10 years to learn how to say your name, so. Tina, even that was inaccurate. I can get, I think if I can find it. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Patamianos. I'm going to say it over and over again so that I don't forget how to say it.
Good morning, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Paul Patamianos, and I serve as the Deputy Secretary of the Office of Policy and Management. I'm going to apologize in advance for my voice. I'm recovering from one of those winter maladies that seems to be going around, so
Stay
bear
on
with
that
me.
side.
Not contagious, thank you. You have my testimony. I'm happy to summarize that for you, or we can jump straight to questions as you prefer.
If you wouldn't mind just summarizing.
Absolutely. So there are a number of adjustments proposed in the governor's budget proposal for OPM. The first is a proposal to add $1 million for OPM to engage a consultant to assess what we're calling the Connecticut option, which would be a publicly designed and privately administered health insurance coverage option. And the consultation would be intended to assess the feasibility of such an approach, and maybe to help design and develop some of the program parameters. Things like network and benefit design, whether reinsurance is appropriate, to do market analyses, et cetera. And we would produce reports out of that consultation within the next year as an interim report, and the following year as a final report. So that's the first adjustment to our budget. The second adjustment is to realign resources from the Office of Health Strategy to OPM for certain functions that are currently performed by OHS, which we believe would be appropriate to be aligned under OPM. In total, $12.2 million and 13 positions would come to OPM from the Office of Health Strategy, and those functions that would move over would include affordability initiatives and health information exchange activities, including Connie, the all-payer claims database, and some of the other IT initiatives. Now, we think there's a natural home at OPM, given that there's policy in our agency name, and we have Health and Human Services Policy and Planning Division, ably led by Claudio Gualteri, who can help drive some of that cross-agency collaboration and coordination around health policy. Another adjustment in our budget is to add some funding to bring on a position to help staff essentially a nonprofit provider advisory board, which would help identify policy opportunities with our nonprofit provider partners and give them a voice in how the nonprofit landscape would look in the state. Additional adjustments to our budget, we have $750,000 proposed to allow us to engage in staffing studies for the Department of Correction and for the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection. It's been some time since either of those agencies have had any sort of staffing analysis done, and we believe it's important to update staffing practices to meet sort of more modern and current requirements. Looking at things like post patterns, whether there's technological approaches that can be employed where we have staff now. At the state police, whether certain functions are better performed by sworn staff or by non-sworn staff. The locations, the numbers of troopers, that sort of thing. So I think it's important to update the information in order for all of us to have something available for decision making as we go forward. An additional adjustment to our budget is the inclusion of $250,000 to provide matching grants, small matching grants to municipalities for the America 250 commemoration. The funds would be used for things like programs, lectures, town celebrations, et cetera. And as I think you've seen in a number of agencies, we are proposing moving certain funds that the legislature appropriated for grants for various purposes out of our other expenses appropriation and into a dedicated appropriation that we're calling various municipal grants, at least at OPM. So $899,000 is moved out of our OE and into this new proposed appropriation to give some visibility and accountability for some of those legislatively directed funds as compared to what the agency utilizes for its operating costs. And as you've seen with other agencies, we are proposing that those realigned funds would be subjected to a 20% reduction. That's done in order to address the balance and spending cap requirements of the state budget. And I think the last significant adjustment I will speak to is the realignment of $1.6 million from our other expenses line to the Mashantucket, Pequot, and Mohegan Fund. These are additional tax loss grants that were appropriated by you for the towns of Ledyard and Montville. So we are moving those funds over to the Mashantucket, Pequot, and Mohegan Fund and ensuring that there's a sufficient revenue source to support those going forward. So there's no change to the level of resources available to towns in the Mashantucket, Pequot Fund. It's just a shift of which fund those funds will be budgeted under. I think those are the highlights of the changes to our budget. I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you. So relative to the, are there any other grants that are left in OE after the ones that happened last year? Are there any other grants left in any OE anywhere in any executive branch agency?
Oh, that's a broad question. I think our intent was to move out some of the more recent ones. I know
Okay.
that there's probably a long history of
Right.
legislative appropriations that may be grant-like in agency OE budgets. I think we've done the best we can to identify recent additions and move those out.
And how did you decide the 20%? When you did it, did you do a 20% across the board? Did you do an analysis on different groups thinking that they could use a bigger cut of 50% and somebody else could only use a 10% cut? How was that done?
Well, two things. First, we exempted certain types of legislative appropriations from the reduction. Funding for federally qualified health centers, funding for housing, and funding for juvenile justice grants, we did not apply any reduction to.
And the juvenile justice grants are not in the executive branch, correct? They're in judish?
I think the vast majority are, that's correct, would be in the judicial department's budget.
Okay.
So we exempted those from consideration for reduction, and frankly, the 20% was in part a mathematical exercise. We are not making any judgments as to which particular items ought to be reduced, should be reduced. I think we would leave that to the General Assembly to make determinations about whether you wanted to do sort of an across-the-board approach, a selective approach, or how you would address the revised level of resources for those particular activities. But we're making no judgment as to which of those might be adjusted.
Okay. I personally am glad to see us go back to the nonprofit healthcare cabinet kind of thing, because we did do that before. It says new, but this isn't really new. This is reconstituting something that we had a long history of doing.
Essentially, that's correct, yes.
Thank you. And on the municipal commemorations of American 250, how is that going to be parsed out? Is that a competitive grant? Is it going to be decided legislatively? How are we doing that?
Well, I think our idea at this point is that we would accept applications from towns. At this point, our thinking is that municipalities that are or become what we call CT 250th affiliate organizations, and I think I provided a link in our testimony to the DECD website that shows what it takes to become one of those communities. But if a municipality elected to become one of those affiliate organizations, they would be eligible to apply. We would require a match from the municipality and would sort of allocate or prorate the funding to municipalities as we get those applications. That's sort of the rough idea we have at this point and how the funds would be administered. They'd be administered through Connecticut Humanities as sort of the administrator of the process.
And the $2,000 from the property tax relief for veterans, does that mean there's only one person left alive for that one?
That is correct, Senator. There is one current participant in that program.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Representative Nuccio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have quite a few questions, so we'll do my two and then come back and back and back. I'm just going to start at the top of my list here. Looking at the elimination of OHS and the transfer into the various agencies, I noticed that there are 7 people going into the insurance fund. Were they currently in the insurance fund?
That's correct.
Okay, and
That's
then in that number there's about 10 point something million in OE. I know OHS was heavily dependent on consultants, and I would argue that a lot of the stuff that OHS did kind of didn't meet the expected outcomes. So are we continuing on with the high usage of consultants contracts on here, and what is that OE number across the board there?
I think the vast majority of the what you're seeing in OE for the insurance fund is related to operations of the all-payer claims database and the health insurance. The health information exchange. So those are operating costs that we have for those particular information systems. So we've proposed that those costs just move over. We have not looked at whether there are certain services that could be insourced rather than outsourced, but that's certainly something we could take a look at going forward.
I think we should definitely do that, and I would request at some point, like the OE here, actually be broken down into that. If it's the all-payer claims database or the health exchange, we should be able to see exactly how much money it's costing to run those, rather than them being lumped into OE, where it seems to be like the dumping ground for everything and the least transparent place in the budget. So if we can look for like some sort of clarification there, I would appreciate that.
Sure.
In regard to the grants being broken out into various municipal grants, I know OPM had some, I received something from the OPM secretary about tightening up the process for legislatively driven things. Do you have actual firm policy that will take this out of the closet that it lives in and put some light on it, make it a public process, have perimeters in place that people can apply for, make it so it's actually something that, you know, is more transparent and not just something that gets thrown into the end of the budget?
We have issued a policy that governs executive branch administration of these funds. I think if there were a desire to revise the process by which the General Assembly makes those decisions, that's not for me to opine on, but that's for you all to make decisions about. But I think we've offered a bill that would, again, govern how the executive branch receives, administers, and ensures that the funds are going to entities that can perform the activities and services that you all intend, and that taxpayer funds are protected.
So it's just going to be on your side of how you're administering it, not how it comes to fruition.
As we're a separate but co-equal branch of government, I think we would defer to you all about how you engage in that process of determining how those funds are allocated. We certainly have our own opinions about whether certain things might be appropriate for you to make funding available for, but again, we defer to your judgment about the sources, the uses and the recipients of those funds.
Okay, I would actually hope you guys would have a stronger opinion, especially with what's going on, but I appreciate that.
Well, I'm not certain that the legislature is willing to give up their power to the executive branch.
Or the FBI. I'll come back for the next
That's
round.
not appropriate. Senator Kushner.
Good morning. It's still morning.
Good morning. Yes.
I want to go back to the.
DAS did their best to make sure that it wasn't still morning, but
I want to go back to the grants that are being moved to the separate account.
yes.
And I think we already asked for this, but if not, we would need to see a list of all the grants that
Sure.
you've moved to that,
Absolutely.
especially given that you're suggesting that the legislature should come up with 20% cuts of those. I just want to be clear that I'm assuming those are probably many small grants. Do you know about approximately how many we're talking about?
6.
Oh, it's 6 grants, so they're
Right.
not small. Do you want to share with us now?
I can tick off the list that I have available for those funds.
Would you
that are-
rather we get them?
Why, I would rather we
Directed
just
to us?
got them to the working group.
Sure,
and,
that's fine.
We'll make sure that's
they'll-
available for the working group.
Because it's not, there's grants in this one, but there's grants in every state agency.
Yes.
The legislative driven grants were not necessarily all assigned to OPM, and I think we
Right.
need to look at it broadly.
The whole thing?
Yeah,
And so the 20% is across the board to to every agency that has grants?
That's right. That was our approach, again, with the exceptions of federally qualified health centers, housing
Right.
programs, and anything that was juvenile justice related.
So essentially, people who've been been advised, organizations and, the various grantees that have been advised that they're going to have this money now, they're going to have to find a 20% cut in their budgets in whatever they're accomplishing.
Again, we would defer to you all to decide whether there's any particular grant that you might want to rethink, or whether it's a more across-the-board type of approach, or how any reduction might be applied.
And can you just tell us in your thinking, how did you get to the 20% number? Where did that come from?
Again, it was sort of the mathematical exercise of getting to a budget that is balanced and compliant with the state spending cap.
Thank you. No other questions?
Andre, Representative Baker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just trying to get a handle on the other expenses. If you look at your budget summary, so there's a number of different other expenses categories, and we're just trying to get a handle on the increases. I kind of understand possibly the insurance and the insurance line. If you could kind of elaborate that a little bit more, is that because a lot of the services were transferred over to you? Is that correct? In the insurance funds?
That's correct. So in the insurance fund, the adjustments are related to the realignment of Office of Health Strategy functions to the Office of Policy and Management.
Uh-huh. So is there any way you can provide us with a breakdown of what those other expenses were? For all your other expenses when your budget summary? So under the personal services, there was a change. There was a change. Kind of lost my place. Sorry. I know there was a change, and
Yeah, there are two changes to our personal services appropriations.
Yeah.
The first is, again, bringing over staff from the Office of Health Strategy to OPM, and that affects both the general fund and the insurance fund. And then we've also proposed one additional position at OPM for this nonprofit advisory board. So those are the adjustments to personal services that we are proposing. In terms of other expenses, the vast majority of the change is related to the Office of Health Strategy, but again, we've also got some funds moving around a bit. We took grants that were budgeted in the enacted biennial budget from other expenses and moved them to the various municipal grants. In the case of these 6 grants that I mentioned, we moved funding for Ledyard and Montville out of the general fund, other expenses line, to the Mashantucket, Pequot, and Mohegan fund. And I think those are the major changes to our other expenses line.
okay. So can you provide with the working group a breakdown of all the expenses, other expenses, and just so that we can maybe just kind of look at those, okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Senator Summers online, and then Representative Haddad.
Yes, I have a couple questions. So I'll ask 2 and then I'll have to come around back. But the first one has to do with the grants and the cutting the 20%. Could you tell me why 3 accounts or 3 grants are not being cut? I heard what you said. I know FQHCs don't usually have legislative oversight. But in the 2 other grants, I'm wondering if you could get us a detailed accounting of what's going out of those grants, who they're going to, and who requested them.
I'm not sure I have the information about who requested them. I think I can tell
the,
you.
The legislature doesn't provide the executive branch with the list of who applies for a specific grant under any circumstance. We don't think that that's the business of the executive branch. We think that that's the business of the legislature.
Okay, well then maybe somebody else can get that to us. I'd like to get a detailed accounting of especially in the those particular grants that are not being cut, what grants have been issued, what the amounts are, and the reason. And if you
The
could get
reason
that to the working
on
group.
FQHCs is because we did give more money to the FQHCs relative to the need of the FQHCs.
I'm not talking about FQHCs. I'm talking about the other two accounts besides the
Housing,
FQHC.
because we have a need for housing, so we're not cutting
Okay.
housing grants. And juvenile justice are not generally handled by the executive branch, they're handled by the judicial branch.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
I'd like to get a
question.
detail. If I have to FOI it, I will, but I'd like to get a detailed accounting of how those grants and how they're going out. And secondly, I was wondering if you could tell me what the makeup of the nonprofit advisory board is going to be. And I'm asking the person who's testifying.
Sure, I'm going to ask Claudio Galtieri to help me out here for the Nonprofit Advisory Board. Claudio?
Yep.
Introduce yourself.
Thank you, Claudio Gualtieri, Senior Policy Advisor, Office of Policy and Management. Hello, Senator Summers. Thank you for the question. This board will be made up of designees from each of the Health and Human Services agencies, along with gubernatorial appointees that include leading voices in the private provider community. It will also include the CEO and president of the Nonprofit Alliance, John Carl Casa. So it's designed to be a constructive forum for problem solving where we can jointly try to figure out best practices, shared administrative simplification, and better outcomes through our nonprofit community. So I hope that answers
that. So no legislators are going to be on that committee.
No, it's not a legislative. It's a roll up your sleeves administrative work group, as has been the past practice when there was a nonprofit board in the past.
Great. Thank you for that. And I'll get in queue for my next two questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Greg Haddad, Representative Haddad, sorry.
It's okay. I answered to Greg too.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here and answering questions. As sometimes small issues raise bigger questions, and so I'm gonna tread a little lightly here, but I just wanted to ask a question about the Mashantucket Pequot Fund. We're moving a little bit of money, and I appreciate the fact that when we move that money, you're not taking away from any other towns. You're sort of it's a fund transfer. But I did go to the back of the budget and started looking at the allocations by town of the Mashantucket Pequot Fund. And unlike other grant formulas that we have, I can't discern a pattern there. And I was hoping that in the work session or prior to a work session, you might be able to provide a narrative that describes how the Mashantucket Pequot Fund distribution works. My understanding is that those communities are most severely impacted by the presence of the two gaming casinos, get an allocation that's greater than what many other towns do, and I think that's entirely warranted, by the way. I drove down for a 50th birthday party at one of the casinos recently, was struck by how much traffic there was. And through these small towns in eastern Connecticut, certainly think that they should be compensated. But there are other instances where there's a town that is, I'm not going to name any of them, but a small town on the Massachusetts border that has 100,000 fewer residents than a mid-sized, a large-sized city in the western part of the state. But the small town gets more money than the big town, and so I would like for there to be a good opportunity for us to ask how this program works and just make sure that the program is working the way it's intended. Thank you.
It's not working the way it was intended. There's a bill in on this, and there was a formula adjustment that I would like to see happen, but we capped it when we were having problems, and we didn't do it. We have not done it correctly since then. We had a bill that went through the legislature, got passed in the Senate, got passed in the House, and the governor vetoed it. I'd like to bring that back. Glad to see you with it.
I'm with it. Thank you.
Representative, we're very happy to bring back to the work group our resident expert on municipal aid, Martin Hept, who is our Undersecretary for Intergovernmental Policy and Planning. He can walk you through, walk all the members through the various formulas, including that for the Mashantucket, Pequot, and Mohegan Fund.
Yes, and good morning. Thank you. I think it's still morning. And as Senator Austin said, it's been a payment list in statute since fiscal year 17. There was one adjustment made in fiscal 19 that removed about 40 or so municipalities from that list, voted on by the legislative side in that payment list during the budget negotiations. Fiscal 17, for those that may have been here or may remember, payment lists were done for tiered pilot and for just about all of the grants at that time. For that, budget process has reverted tiered pilot and others off of the payment list. Mashantucket is still on the payment list. For that, there's been some minor adjustments here and there over the years by payment list, but it has not been calculated by formula since prior to fiscal 17. So that's just some back history. There is a wonderful Office of Legislative Research report that gives you the full history, which I'm happy to share with the committee as well.
I think what Undersecretary Heff is getting at is that the distribution by municipality is essentially a function of what the General Assembly has passed as the list of towns to receive those funds and the amounts they are to receive. And it's not currently driven by any underlying formula or statute.
Understood, thank you. And I'll look for that OLR report. They do great work.
Yes, let's see. Everybody else has been for the first time, so I'm just going to jump right in. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good
Good
day.
to see you. Good to see you. Good. I just want to ask for a breakdown of your OE lines. Who's getting money out of your OE lines in your budget? Other expenses?
Right, so when you say who's getting money, you're asking about the grants?
The breakdown of who's getting money out of that OE line.
Correct. And I just wanted to clarify, are you asking for the grants that are paid out of OE or for a broader explanation of everything that we're spending out of OE?
Well, I think what we're looking for is just to see, we've had some things that have been in a SID and then they've been pushed into other locations. So we're trying to find out sort of the dotted line, which is part of the reason why we don't like consolidation, because we have a hard time finding things. We'd like to get a breakdown of just what's in OE and maybe the contracts or grants or whatever you've got in there. That would be good.
We'll provide you some detail.
Thanks. Yeah, just listings. I don't need to know who put them there. I just need to know what they are. Thank you. And then the 750 that you are going to use to look at the staffing at DOC. I wanted to be here to talk to DAS, because doesn't DAS do that?
I think what we've been asked by both commissioners for the ability to bring in some expertise that they can look at what best practices are in other states, how technology interacts with the staffing that we have in these facilities, which functions are best performed, in the case of the state police, by sworn versus non-sworn staff. What are the right locations for these folks? So that, I think, goes beyond the level of
what DAS would be
yes,
able
the
to do.
HR functions that DAS provides currently. So we want to bring in sort of experts in these areas that have the ability to speak to what other states are doing and how we might learn from those best practices about how we ought to organize our staffing and what the right staffing levels are.
Yeah, I mean, last night when we did have the public hearing, it was brought to our attention, I think there were like 5 different people that have medical services in their title. And yet none, well, we started questioning that right away because they were at very, very high prices in salaries and things like that. So, and I know we're trying to figure out medical. That part of it, I think the legislature really wants to be informed on that and how that's going, because that's one of the weaknesses that we see in the system. So, okay, so that's that. Okay, those are the only 2 that I really wanted to ask for, and anything else I ask later. So, for the second go-round, I have Representative Baker, Representative Nuccio, and Senator Summers. Okay. Oh. have you gone for the first time?
So,
No, go, no, go ahead, I'm sorry, I had second, I just took over.
I just raised my hand for the first time now. No, it's not your fault at all.
I just took over, so go ahead. You go first because you haven't had a chance.
Thank you. I had a question about this Department of Corrections study about staffing. You know, it was, for those who tuned in, it was a pretty shocking public hearing yesterday when you have prison inmate advocates coming to the legislature and saying things like, we don't need more money, we need more accountability. And literally statements such as, we need results more than we need reports, and why do we continue to fund things that are a failure? These are people whose life's work is inmate advocacy, and they were basically saying that the conditions that are going on in prisons are the number one biggest problem. So when we talk about here, I know corrections is only one part of the staffing study that's called for here, but what is the goal of that? Is the goal of that to figure out whether we need more staffing? Is the goal to increase the efficacy of the staff we have? Is the goal to ask whether the staff is under appropriate conditions? Like, what are we trying to get at there? What problem are we trying to solve for?
I would say the primary problem would probably be the level of staffing, and then secondarily to that, whether the skill sets that we have in place are the right skill sets for the current environment. So for instance, at DOC, they have a certain number of what they call posts. What are the post patterns? And if you look at current census within the facilities, the facility design they have, the programming they offer, do we have the right number of people in the right places? And I think you're kind of getting at, you know, what are the skill sets of those people once they are on the ground? So I think first and foremost, we have to take a look at, you know, do we have the right number of people? And then what are the kind of people that we need to have in place? You know, one of the issues that we have heard from you all and is a concern to us is the level of overtime that's being incurred by that agency as well as others, 24/7 operations in particular. And so the question that comes to our mind is, do we have the right level of staffing, and are they assigned to the right places? And it's been quite some time since we've evaluated the level of staffing that we need in a place like the Department of Correction or within our state police. So we think it's time to bring some expertise to the table to take a look at these issues. And particularly when you look at the impact that technology is having on whether and how we can deploy staffing in these environments, we ought to take advantage of sort of the latest thinking in determining what the right level of staffing is for these agencies.
Is staffing for the Office of Ombudsman in the Department of Corrections going to be considered in this study of staffing? Because again, it was quite skewed yesterday, and people were saying what we need is oversight of the dollars that are being deployed. There's enough money in the system, but there's no oversight in where it's going, and they really advocated strongly for the Ombudsman's office to be better staffed. Is that part of the study?
We didn't envision that as being part of the study. They are currently part of the Office of Governmental Accountability for budgeting purposes. So we were focused primarily on the Department of Correction proper rather than any of the other agencies that might assist or service or oversee that agency.
I'll ask someone they come before us that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else who hasn't spoken for the first time? Yes, Representative Belinsky.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I have to jump on the bandwagon of the DOC right now because I have a family member that works within the DOC and many friends. I also have an individual that I am friendly with that wound up in one of the facilities and then had charges dismissed, but it took 7 months of hell before that happened. And the morale issues will not show up in a study if the study group does not conduct its work in the facilities. And I will also observe that the conditions vary dramatically from facility to facility. There are a couple of facilities that have very, very widely known reputations for things like a very dark staff morale. I realize that I'm going off the budget topic, so I'm going to cut myself short without being cut off. But it's inhumane, and for an inmate who I like to refer to as a guest of the state, to be denied medical care or to be denied the opportunity to have his phone call. And then as a legislator, for me to feel completely powerless to help anybody without upsetting somebody in the building in the process of saying what I'm saying right now. We got a really badly broken system. It begins, in the judicial branch as well. But the fact of the matter is, we have some really bad conditions in our correctional facilities, and we really do need to address them. When the advocates and the ombudsman come forward and they tell you these things, those folks, their positions exist to shine a light on things and for the good of the population that's in there, that we want to return to society and not have them be recidivists. And I'm done. It's just when I get a phone call about DOC issues in my constituency, it's never a good one. Whether it comes from a CO or it comes from somebody who has a family member, or maybe it's an actual individual who's used their phone call to call me, which is pretty damn desperate because I don't have the keys. So the accountability comment that Rep. Corpus referred to, it's not just the buildings. It's the people and the way they're treated. So you can't put a budget number on that, so I apologize for droning on, but thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'm going to ask my colleagues, because OPM is now over and we only have 30 minutes slotted for the comptroller and his group. So if you could, the people that I have on here are Representative Baker, Representative Nuccio, Senator Summers. If you could send your questions to Madam Administrator, she will share them with you guys so that we can try and, because we're trying to squeeze in maybe a little lunch somewhere today, and if we have to. So I'm sure you're not going to object.
Not at all, and we're happy to continue the conversation in the subcommittee work sessions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Next, we have the Office of the State Comptroller. And this is going to go more than 30 minutes. I know that. Hey, I don't know if Sean's ever talked less than an hour. How you doing?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Always good to be back before the legislature, and as always, we'll just try to summarize my testimony briefly here to leave time for questions. Cut right to the chase and just say that the governor's budget mostly funds our anticipated needs, but there are some things that we would like to bring before the committee to draw their attention to. First, in the second page of our testimony, we are continuing to advocate for 11 additional positions. These are all repeats that I have repeatedly testified about. I want to draw your attention to 3 of them. The first have to do with Core CT. As you all probably know, virtually every single state transaction, financial, payroll, human resources, all of that goes through Core CT, and we have had a 25% staff reduction in the last 7 years, while at the same time significantly increasing the demands of that team by adding the modernization project that we've spent years working on, by incorporating the TRS system into Core CT. All of these things are leading to significant problems when it comes to the fact that we've had such a reduction. And for years, we've been able to absorb those reductions, but with more and more coming onto their plate, it's harder and harder for us to do it. The second group would be the audit staff. We have been asked in the last 12 months to do 2 significant audits on behalf of the governor, one on the cannabis group, which is the Social Equity Council, and the second on the CSCU leadership's misspending. Those 2 audits took considerable portions of our team's time. We love to do them. We think that those 2 audits warranted some really good uncoverings and also some laws that were passed as a result of our recommendations last session, but it takes a big part of our time. Secondary to the additional audits that we are doing for the governor, we now have absorbed the responsibility of overseeing the P-Card program from DAS, and despite taking oversight of the P-Card program, we have seen no additional resources as a result of that, which is obviously further straining the team. Finally, on the retirement benefit officers, we're asking for 2 additional positions. Again, this is a repeat of what I've asked for in the past, and the reason for this is pretty simple. The number of people with pensions is up, and the number of pensioners who are dying is up. We average about 200 pensioners dying per month. This team is the resource that works with the family to make sure that they understand what benefits are available to them. And with more of these individuals dying, it's a greater strain. We are falling behind, and we would ask for those 2 additional resources. On the OE side, asking for an additional $1.9 million. Again, broken down into 3 categories. The first is the largest, which has to do with Core CT. As I just mentioned, we have seen our projects there really grow in size, and we have been asking for years for additional dollars here, mostly to do with software licensure, which we have been trying our best to absorb, but we simply just cannot do that anymore. And then 2 smaller programs, but not insignificant and very important to me. The first is to try something different when it comes to the Medical Examination Board. This is a group that is looking at confirming that people who are receiving disability pensions should still be receiving them. This is something I've been proud to have done in my tenure as comptroller. We reformed the disability pension system for the first time in about 30 plus years. This is a result of that, and we think that by switching to a system where we would contract with a vendor that would do these investigations for us is better than the system we have now, where we basically pay doctors a lot of money to sit on these panels. It's not as efficient as it could be. We want to try a pilot to do this. And finally, better fraud detection. We do a very good job of catching fraud when it happens in the state of Connecticut. It's harder for us to do this when it happens elsewhere. You may have seen that my office and the Chief State's Attorney's office recently worked together to uncover a pretty significant case of fraud in which a retiree who was living in Florida had died. We didn't know about it for several years because the roommate of that person continued to cash her checks. One of the reasons why we didn't find out about that is because our software that we currently have right now is not great at checking things nationally. And in this instance, the reason why the current software we have didn't catch it is because the woman never had an obituary. So we rely on obituaries nationally to try to catch these things because we don't get the death records in the same way that we do in Connecticut. And by using Clear, which is a nationally renowned product, we'd be able to better catch some of these instances and root out those rare examples of fraud and abuse. Finally, on the last page, we give an update on what's happening with healthcare. Last year, when I came before this committee, I tried to sound the alarm bell on what was happening with our retiree healthcare costs, which, like all retiree healthcare costs across the United States, are growing rapidly due to different factors we can get into if folks have questions. I'm happy to say that we were able to mitigate a lot of that cost in the sense that I made a decision to go out to RFP. We renegotiated our contract, and therefore the projections that I'd given the committee last year did not come to fruition in the worst case. We still are seeing significant cost increase, again, as every plan in the United States is. Less of a problem on the active side, but still, again, the same trends that are impacting everyone are certainly impacting us. We're doing everything we can to try to mitigate these cost increases, but they are still very much an issue for us, both here on the plans that I run, certainly on the Medicaid side, as I'm sure you have covered in previous hearings or in subsequent hearings. And with that, I think I will stop and just thank the committee again for letting us be here today. And we're happy to answer any questions. We have our whole team here.
Thank you, Comptroller. On the retiree healthcare, how many people are in retired healthcare?
Right now, we have 50,000 retirees, but it's 72,000 lives with their dependents and spouses.
So there's 72,000 lives.
Correct.
And how many lives are in the active healthcare system?
Latest count on the active side is about, Ray Ellen? Yeah,
I didn't hear what you said, I'm sorry.
50,000.
50,000, so less than
But that's the active employees with the dependents, 115.
115.
Yes.
I just can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
150 or 115?
115.
I still didn't catch that.
115,000.
115.
Yes.
And of
Then you got the
those-
78,000 or 72,000 on the retiree side. We got about 60,000 or so on the partnership plan, bringing us to about 250,000.
And on the, because talk about healthcare all the time, not just with state employees, but also broadly. And the number of state employees that are at that age range where there is not a lot of healthcare being used, that, do you have an idea on what that is? So those that are between, say, 20 and 40 who don't necessarily seek a lot of health care. Those that are retired are seeking more health care. So you made a statement that said retiree health care always going up, blah, 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 going up nationally. But that's a different demographic, different age range. They use health care more apt to have consequences.
I can get you, Senator, a chart showing the different breakdowns. I don't think that we have that handy. What I would say is that generally people who are older utilize healthcare more.
Correct.
But the problems of utilization are hurting us both on the retiree side because they use it more and on the active side because there's more volume for it. So in both cases, even though the age bands maybe have different utilization trends, the utilization generally is hurting us because of the costs associated with that utilization.
But you just made a point before that said, retirees, we're having a problem there just like every other. You didn't say we're having a problem on the active side because everywhere in the country they're using more. And the numbers show $779,283,930 for state employee health service cost for active employees, and for retirees, $996,028,080. So we added in $38 million and change on the retirees. We added $71 million and change on the active, a 10% differential. So do we have the correct numbers this year? Because last year you intimated that we didn't have the correct numbers.
Raylan, you want to join?
And after you introduce yourself, I'll say something. Go ahead.
Sure thing. Good morning. Ray Ellen Roy. I am the Interim Director of Healthcare Policy.
So Ray Ellen, I want to thank you for meeting with me on information that High Tech, the Department of Corrections, is trying to delve down into some of the numbers of usage relative to those who have died on the job, those who are dying that are retirees, and what the reason is, so that we can start delving into the reason why we're seeing deaths at that level in the Department of Correction employees, both retired and active. So I appreciate you getting on the call, because Josh Wojcik was doing that work for us, and he's taken a different job. So thank you very much for doing that, and I owe you an email, so I'll send that out hopefully today. Go ahead.
So referring back to the question you asked, to the best of our knowledge today, the figures that have been presented are accurate. The market today is very volatile. As we all know, we have a very hard flu and COVID season coming through this winter, so we're seeing a spike in utilization. The best of the figures that we're able to present as of today are presented in that budget item that was provided. We are continuing to monitor that, though.
Thank you. I went over the two questions last time, so I'm not going to do that because I'll get yelled at. Are there any questions? Representative Nuccio?
I will definitely have more than two, ma'am. Just to follow up to what you just said, the last line of your testimony says, at this time, the governor's budget underfunds the active state employee health service cost line item by $17.1 million for fiscal year 2027. So that seems to contradict that, what the governor's budget has as accurate.
I was referring to what we had submitted as accurate.
So you're saying we need $17.1 million more?
Correct.
And, okay, all right. Thank you, as that didn't come across that way. I have a few questions, but I'm only gonna ask two at this point, and then I'll come back through. You had mentioned the $60,000, the 60,000 members in the partnership plan. I know the partnership plan was over in the last year. In that case, who pays for that overage? Right, because I know I confirmed with you, Comptroller, that we do not go back and say to the towns, you know, you have gone over and you have to pay this. So how does that overage get paid?
That would be included and rolled over into the next year's renewal. So the groups that are participating in the plan would continue to pay that and would build back up the reserve that's necessary to cover costs.
What do you have in reserve currently? Do you have this shortage that was there in reserve?
It is being developed and built up. I do not have the figure with me today, but I can get that for you as to what the reserve value is and what the intended reserve value is as well.
So it's basically, we're floating the cost. The taxpayers are floating the cost until they can build up a reserve to be able to accommodate the overage.
No, as of current, we are paying claims as they come in. So we are paid up to date with claims, and they are covered by the premiums that are coming in. We are not floating any costs at all. There are no additional costs or funds being utilized in order to pay claims or administration costs.
So I think that's what I don't get, right? If you're over by, 20-something million, right, that means you've got more claims than you have premium.
Correct.
Right, I understand this industry pretty well. Like, you have more claims than you have premium. And if you don't have that 20+ million in a reserve account someplace, claims are being paid. How are they being paid?
They're being drawn down from the reserve that was there. The intent is to have a reserve in place that would cover at least 45 days worth of claims costs. That was in place previously. By having an MLR that was above 100%, we spent down a good portion of that reserve. So in order to replace those funds and replenish those funds, the increase for the coming fiscal year would incorporate rebuilding that balance that was used up.
Right, and that will help rebuild that balance going forward.
Correct.
Right, so what is the current MLR?
I don't have the figure for the current fiscal year's MLR because the year is so volatile.
Okay, while you're all
it's
talking
consistently
MLR, please say what MLR means.
MLR
I
is the
do
medical
speak in
loss ratio, so.
Yes.
People are listening.
Okay,
So they know what it is, please.
Technically, the way that the insurance is structured, the MLR, which is the medical loss ratio, is, if you think about the federal, the way that the federal fully insured plans are administered, at least 85 cents, 80 to 85 cents of every single dollar has to go towards medical cost. If you have a higher MLR, that means you are paying more money than you have in premium. So that's, can you bring to the working group what was in the reserve after we pay down what is left in the reserve, and I want to understand the float. Because there's a float happening, right? There's a float happening. So I would like to understand the float and what the increase that we're expected to see. I know at one point you guys were looking at increasing certain towns based on utilization, not just a flat number. I'd like to understand how the plans are being structured going out. And also, if you could just bring a high level, I could be wrong, but I know at one point when you got into the partnership plan, you had to say you would be in for at least 5 years in order to get, or is it 3 now? In 3 years, and you had to have 100% vote to get out of the plan from all of the employees. I'd like to understand how that's functioning, because I know I've had some towns reach out about extremely high increases and not really having the ability to get out.
Certainly, Representative, we can get you that information. I'd just say for the committee and for the record, that MLR has only exceeded 100 twice in the last 7 years. We've had a lot of stability in the plan. We have not had a single member leave the plan this year or tell us they're planning to leave. I think because the grass is not greener on the commercial side. They're seeing increases far beyond what it is that we're projecting to them right now. And I think as a result of that, you see stability in our roster of membership. But certainly we'll get you information about what it is that a town would have to do to leave, any information that you want, specifically on the MLR.
Thank you very much. I'll come back for a second round.
All right. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question, the medical examiners board, that falls in your, okay, I was looking at my budget and I didn't see anything I remember the last time, I believe it was last year, there was some conversation in regards to being able to get doctors that at a comparable, at a reasonable rate. And was that one ever established? And if you can, you know.
John Harrington is the division director. He'll come up and answer that question, Representative.
My name is John Harrington. I'm the director of the.
You gotta turn your mic on.
John Harrington, director of the Retirement Services Division. And with respect to the medical examining board, so the medical examining board, we hire part-time employees, state employees, and that's where the money comes to pay for those services right now. What this proposal is that we would contract with a third party, and the idea would be that we would match up the cases that come before the medical examining board with specific specialists that have a specialist in the underlying conditions. Right now, what we have to do is that we have a roster of doctors from which we identify panels of doctors, and so we may have 20 different claims, and we would have 3 different doctors. They're physicians, but they all have different specialties, and their specialties don't necessarily match up to the underlying conditions with the entire roster that's coming before the MEB. So that's one of the primary benefits of going this route. There's also the determination of whether someone's disabled focuses somewhat on the job duties, and so how those medical conditions actually relate to the job duties. Through a third-party vendor, we would have access to occupational therapists as well who can help with those determinations. So the hope would be that by contracting with this third party, we would get stronger and better decisions going forward.
So as of now, how many vacancies do you have with the actual examining board itself?
Well, I'm not certain that we have vacancies. We have approximately, 24 doctors that we pull from, and that, so we have meetings typically once a month. Some months we have more than 1 month. There's 3 doctors per panel, and so we schedule them based on their availability.
Okay, so can you just provide the working group with a breakdown of the actual outside, I believe it was an outside agency, and what you're spending on that, and also a breakdown on the fees, because I know that was a conversation you were having before about raising the fees to get doctors in. You were having trouble getting doctors to be part of it because of the fees that they were being allocated or offered to them. So if you could give a breakdown of it, so I can see overall what that budget it looks like.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Comptroller, Mr. Comptroller, do you have any idea on the, where we stand relative to the fund balance or for state employee and teachers' retirement? How funded are we, do you know?
In terms of the healthcare,
Yep. Because we do have a separate account, right, for healthcare that people are paying into?
Oop, my apologies.
Yep.
You're speaking to the Retiree Health Trust Fund, otherwise referred to as OPEB by many of our employees. I don't have the figure with me today, but I will get that for you for the working group.
the answer is not good.
That's what I figured, but I want to make sure that we know what that is. And Representative Nuccio has more questions, but I have to correct the record on one thing that have nothing to do with the Office of the Comptroller. The Office of Policy Management was here, and Representative Haddad was asking about the Mashantucket Pequot Fund, and I said I'd been working on it. I will tell you very clearly, and for any of the public listening, that the people who did the actual work to analyze the Mashantucket Pequot Fund are our nonpartisan staff in OFA, and they did the analysis. I was the recipient of that analysis from questions I asked, but the analysis was done by the very good staff in the Office of Fiscal Analysis. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows it's not me doing the actual work. I'm the recipient of that work. So, Representative Nuccio. Oh, Representative Corpus.
I must be slow on the draw because this keeps happening. Sorry, I'll get my act together. Thank you, Commissioner. In your testimony, you say that, Controller rather, you say that we've deposited $10 billion in extra payments to our pension system, which is great. But I struggle with that number because during the same period of time, we've increased state employees' salaries every year in the past 6 years, thereby adding to our liabilities. So I'm concerned about or focused on what is the net number? What has our net progress been as we've paid down $10 billion? Have we made $10 billion of progress? I think the number is closer to 2 when you add how we've increased our liabilities.
I'd say, Representative, that both things can be true. We have made $10 billion worth of supplemental payments towards the liability at the same time that liability also continues to grow because of what we do in other parts of government. I don't, off the top of my head, know what that difference would be, but we can certainly try to get back to you with what that number might represent.
They can both definitely be true at the same time, but the real progress and the real measure of our progress has to be the net number because the difference between our liabilities and our assets is the issue, as you know better than anyone in this room. And I'm focused on how much that has actually changed. I had a second question on the ADEC payment we have here on page 11 of the budget sheets. So the ADEC payment, which is the actuarially determined employer contribution, is rising by $5 million here. So again, with respect to this, how much have we paid into our pension system? In 2025, we chose to raise our volatility cap by $600 million in 26 and $600 million in 27. So that's $1.2 billion that would have gone to pay into our pension assets that the legislature decided not to do. We also took a $200 to $300 million preschool fund off the books, and that was diverted funds outside of our pension system. And then we just passed in an e-cert last week an additional $500 million, which would have gone to paying off our pension assets, which now went towards the governor's fund. So that's almost $2 billion, which did not get paid into our pension plan in the last eight months. So I assume that the reason we now have to pay $5 million more into ADAC is in part due to those. Some people would characterize them as allocations. I would characterize them as violations of the fiscal guardrails. But what is that $5 million in additional ADAC payments coming from?
Right. So the way that this would work, and to back up to your initial question, we continue to make progress on the ratio of the assets to liabilities. The funded ratio of the plan has improved consistently from 2018 forward. So the additional contributions to the pension plan, they are paying down the existing debt, and they're paying down the existing debt far in excess of whatever our initial projections were. And so the changes in salary over time, those changes in salary, they take into account a number of factors. So when we have our annual actuarial evaluation, there's a line item for losses associated with salary, but that's not all just based on salary increases. It's based on one of the larger contributing factors was that we had a number of individuals that left in 2022, and that opened up a number of promotional opportunities for people within the workforce. So what the actuaries do is they will project forward someone's projected salary over the course of their career. But if you have lots of people that receive promotions that weren't anticipated, that's going to reflect as a loss in salary. And there are a number of factors like that that go into the salary issue. But what I would say is that the losses from one year to the next, or the gains from one year to the next, are based on the actuarial experience through that year. So if we have more deaths than we anticipate, if we have more retirements than we anticipate, all of those things will result in a change to the ADEC. So in some cases, the ADEC is going to increase more from one year to the next than what was anticipated. But what's absolutely certain is that those additional contributions to the system through the volatility cap, that is reducing future ADECs by a tremendous amount each year, and each additional contribution continues to reduce that. So we're essentially taking short-term gains and translating them into long-term relief over the course of the next 30 years.
Right, well, that's exactly right. Is any of the 5 million we see here in front of us, this number on page 11 for this adjustment in 27, is any of that due to our diversion of money away from paying down pension debt?
Yeah, I can't say that for certain. I would know that the bulk of that would be based on actuarial performance, but I think that we would have to get back to the group on more specifics on working through exactly how we arrive at that figure.
But it will definitely, there's no question, it's just simple math. The lack of depositing of that $2 billion will for sure affect our ADEC payments in the long term, with respect to our pension plan over a long period of time.
Correct. If we put more money into the system, the ADEC
Right.
would decrease over time.
And I also want to make sure.
I think you said two different things, guys.
Yeah,
You just said exactly two different things. You both contradicted each other, and you didn't even notice it. So you're saying.
Let's rewind that and clear that
I
up.
really need to have that clarified. You said that if we put more money in, that the ADAC will go down. She said that by diverting the money, the ADAC will go up. And that's exactly the opposite from each other. So you got to
No,
pay attention to both of them. The ADAC is going down each year because we've made additional payments. And the
No.
$5 million that you're talking about is in the UAL. It's in the unfunded liability.
If I may, Senator Austin, I think we're saying exactly the same thing. Every time we put money into our pension plan, our ADAC is decreased in future years. And every time we don't put money into our pension plan, which is what we did this year, our ADAC has to go up in future years.
I guess what the
So
issue is
it's the exact same principle. That's why a diversion is so costly to us.
No.
I think
Please.
the issue is that the ADEC isn't decreasing as quickly going forward. The fact that we don't pay additional money into it, that's not going to cause the ADEC to increase, but it's going to reduce the rate at which it decreases in future years.
Right.
Right, but it's still, the principle is still the same, which is anytime we pay into our pension plan, we save exponential dollars going forward. And anytime we fail to pay into our pension plan, which, sorry, but we did abysmally this year, we are increasing our long-term obligations and not saving that money on a compounding basis.
We didn't fail to put any money into our ADAC. These
Correct.
are additional payments. We have paid the actuarial amount going into our ADAC since Dan Malloy was governor. And
Correct.
Dan Malloy would not sign a budget. He was the main purveyor I think you were in the legislature at the time, of making sure that we were paying the full amount of the ADAC. The additional payments are because we're thinking succinctly on trying to drop those numbers down further. But that is not a requirement by state law, nor does it address the other issues that we have within the confines of a budget to look at different things. That doesn't mean that we're not being fiscally responsible. I think we are being fiscally responsible. So I just, I think that to say that it's not paid, we have paid 100% of the ADAC. As a matter of fact, the reason why it shows up in the UAL is we are paying 100%. When we look at our tiers, and if you, I think I'm going to ask for some information at the working group too. I think we have and we may have a philosophical difference on this, but I say we have paid 100% of the ADAC. We have not paid some amount of additional payments, but that does not mean that we have not paid 100% of the ADAC.
We have paid the ADAC payment since 2011 every year.
No, I'm not
Without
disputing
fail.
that. I'm not disputing that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is by failing to continue to fund our pension plans to the extent we were able to do that, but we chose to put the funds elsewhere. We could debate whether that was a good use of funds, but what I'm saying is the failure to pay $2 billion into our pension assets this year will have consequences on our ADAC payments in the future.
And I'm sorry. The fact is, but we can't leave it stand on the record. There are times when you can't leave something stand on the record. The record is that we have put $1.9 billion into pensions just this year. We've paid the full amount for all state employee raises, so it won't add to future issues. And we've had a higher rate of return than expected. So we are doing great on our pensions. Having been somebody who has had to take tough votes when other people refuse to take the votes on pensions since 2011, this is something that I consider to be very important. We have not done abysmally on paying our pensions and the ADAC. We have done great at that. Absolutely fantastic. Do we still owe more money? Well, let's bring those legislators and governors that were here for 70 years when we didn't put anything in.
That's all true. What I'm saying, however, is that we still have the highest pension debt per capita of any state in the entire country.
No, we don't.
So we have made progress. There's just no disputing the fact that we've made progress. I just would have liked to see the progress continue to the extent it could have in 2025 when we chose to divert $2 billion to other things. Because to me, this is, I'm sure it's no surprise to you, Controller Scanlon, that this is where the big money is.
It is where the big money is.
This is where the big money is. When you see changes to the budget in the tune of $65 million and $25 million, it really dwarfs the other changes to the budget that we're seeing. I know those were for fringe benefits and not for pension payments. I take that, but this is where the big money of the state is. And that's why I'm so focused on this. So thank you.
I thank you. If I can just say, without relitigating any of this,
Good luck.
yeah, I think undisputably we have made incredible progress in the last decade, and I was here to Representative and Senator Austin's point in 2017 when we couldn't balance that budget, and we did pass a bipartisan budget that has paved the way in the last 8 years for a lot of progress. What I think you see happening now, and frankly it's happening on both sides of the aisle. I watched the Senate Republican press conference yesterday in which they said they wanted to take a significant portion of that volatility cap dollars and use it for something else. I think that you are seeing a bipartisan consensus questioning whether we are putting aside too much money when it comes to volatility. And that is a lesson that I think we should look at very closely, because in those dark days of 2017, no offense to anybody sitting here, they made, in my opinion, a significant mistake, which is that they based volatility on 1 year, and that 1 year happened to be quite unrepresentative of what actual volatility was. And so I think you're going to see in the next couple of years people on both sides of the aisle suggesting potential uses of that volatile money because of that factor. What I would caution as the comptroller to both of my friends on both sides of the aisle is that I think we should do that in a sound way that has a plan. And when I say that, it's because our guardrails were unanimously reauthorized by this legislature a few years ago, and they are set to expire in 2028. I think we should think long and hard between now and 2028 and work together, Democrat and Republican, to figure out what the next iteration of the guardrails would look like after 2028, and perhaps think about implementing a 3 or a 5 year look back at volatility to come up with the right number going forward. I would caution us not to do much beyond that now until we have that consensus. But I understand the challenges and needs of this legislature, and I think there is a significant difference, last thing I would say, between one-time uses of that money and ongoing use of that money. And that seems to be a big difference between the two caucuses right now when it comes to proposals that I have seen, where one is one time and the other is quite not that. And I think that we have to be very cautious about that. And that's a caution to both sides of the aisle.
So we've gone 15 minutes over, and we only have 15 minutes to take a break now. And so anybody
Sorry.
has, no, it's not you, it's us. Because we all have questions, and I think we're gonna have to look at this, because we do have a lot of questions. I think they're good questions. So we're gonna send you questions. Anybody else who has questions can forward them to the administrator, and we'll get them at the working group. And we're going to take a 15-minute break, and we'll be back at 1 o'clock for the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Thank you all.
It's 19.
19 minutes?
Yes. I'm hungry.
Thank you.